everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Movie Reel. I'm your host, Kevin Tracy.
I'm Samantha Tomlinson, and what do we do on this podcast, Kevin?
We talk about movies that we like, don't like, and other movies in between, and dissect them in weird ways and make fun of them.
And so we're continuing with our summer movies. So it's July. So previously we did the second Independence Day, and now we're going to do the second Mummy because we did that last year. So the Mummy Returns. And okay, first of all, I love this movie. I love the Mummy movies in general. Like, I think the Mummy for us was like a bonding. Like, that's one of the things we bonded over when we
It
met.
really was, yeah.
And rewatching, I think I actually, oddly enough, I think I saw this one first because they were both on TV, and I think I watched parts of this and parts of the first one, and it wasn't until I think for my 13th birthday, I was like super into the Mummy by that point. Like, we had just gotten into him. And I remember for my birthday, at the time, this one was my favorite. And I really wanted the Mummy. I got the first one, and then my parents got me the third one. And I think, truly, right, I realized all I really wanted was the second one. But rewatching them, because I went back and forth a lot, and rewatching it, the first one is definitely my favorite. The first one is definitely the best one. First one, I think, is definitely my favorite.
I 100% agree with you on that in terms of both favorite and which one is the superior Mummy.
But this is not a bad sequel in terms of
it's a good sequel
on a scale of
especially
on a scale of 1 to Independence Day Resurgence. This is a very good sequel, I think.
Oh, this is leaps and bounds better than that train wreck.
I had heard though that apparently the first one was so successful. I want to say Universal called the director, so Steven Summers.
Steven Summers.
They called him up. And they're like, okay, we need another one because the first one was such a smash hit.
Yeah, I heard that as well. Like within like a couple days after it had released in theaters, they had called him saying like, "Hey, we want you to do a sequel," and it pretty much went like into production pretty soon after the first one because this movie came out in 2001.
Yeah.
And the first one came out in like 99.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking that too. Like that, there is no break, and they're supposed to be like, it's like what 8 years later. They think they said 9 years later, but
no, it's 8 years later. But the thing is, I think like in actuality they're like 7 years or like 6 or 7 years apart, which makes kind of there's a couple plot holes that I've noticed while recently watching this. The main one being is Alex, their son in this movie. He said like a couple times in the movie that's like, I'm 8 years old, but like the timeline of the movie, I think the first movie takes place in like 1926 and this movie takes place in like 1932. That's 6 years.
I thought it said 33 on the screen.
Okay, well, 7 years. Still.
Yeah.
Still, it's like that would mean that Alex was 1 year old when Rick and Evelyn just met. That must have been an interesting story.
I mean, I had done the math. Like, this is in the the first one was 1920s, so it's not unrealistic that right after the events of the previous movie, Evie and Rick got married and then had a baby. That's what you did back then.
No,
but I agree. Like,
yeah, no, not at all. But it just the timeline, even if they just like knock boots like immediately after the credits rolled for the first movie, the timeline still doesn't match up.
It did. I did think about. I think the reason when I was 13 why I loved the second one, why I love this one so much compared to the first one, was because the movie. And I will say, I give this to the movie because I feel like even movies today, I don't see this a lot. They don't tease Rick and Evie's relationship. Like, they are very much in love, and they kiss a lot. And I mean this in a good way, because I feel like a lot of movies, like, they tease those moments for the audience, and then we don't get them. Whereas in this, like, they're flirting with each other consistently after the whole first incident, the first incident of the movie with the mummy, and they like rescue Evie, they kiss, and then later they're about to go fight again, they're about to be separated, they
they're very much in love, and like the chemistry, it doesn't seem
yes,
forced at
and it's
all, which I feel like,
no, they are great together.
yeah, Rachel Weisz and Brendan Fraser, like I could like as a kid watching this, I would have genuinely believed like, oh, they're like actually married. Like the chemistry between the two of them
Yeah,
was like that on point, that it was such a believable depiction of how they met and how he was just so like transfixed by like her passion, and how she was able to go from kind of like this like kind of mousy bookworm to being like, I'm going on an adventure, and just kind of getting out of her bubble, and just like it's like, and she's seeing him as like this like daring swashbuckling rogue, but has like a gentle side to him, and is like kind of like
yeah.
kind of a guardian angel kind of role for the group, and it just makes it seem a little bit more believable that they had such great chemistry right off the first bat in the first movie. And I'm glad that they were able to capture lightning in a bottle for the second time for this movie.
I was waiting, like, I mean, not waiting, I guess. I've seen this movie, but, like, you almost wish, like, for a second, like, somebody, even, like, Emotep being like, oh, you guys got married. And you're like, oh, okay, that's nice. Like, someone, which obviously no one's gonna do that. But even, like, when, Ardith Bay shows up,
Yeah,
he
Ardeth
is not,
Bay.
how do Ardith?
Ardeth.
Because I think it starts with, I thought it starts with an O, his
No,
name.
it's Ardeth Bay.
Okay, because I swear, maybe I'm okay. Ardith. Anyway, when he shows up, he's not even like batting an eye at this because, and I to prep for this, I actually watched the first one a few nights ago, and then I watched Mummy Returns last
Yeah,
night, and like he's there pretty much through most of their relationship, and I think probably the scene where Emotep, takes
yeah.
Evie and like to be sacrificed, and he's like holding Rick back because he does not want to let her go. Like I think there's no way he's
I
like,
mean,
oh great, like he's like, yeah.
I mean, I can genuinely like believe that like he's Alex's godfather, because the only other male candidate would have been Jonathan, and he's just a total screw up. I could totally believe that Ardeth Bay is like Alex's godfather, which actually would make sense.
He doesn't even bat an eye, Alex, when Artist shows
No,
up.
not at all.
Like I'm assuming they've obviously probably mentioned him, but even when he shows up, Evie's not like, what, Ardith? Like I haven't seen you in a long time. She's just like, oh, what do you, I
I
mean,
mean,
and
she's
again,
like,
I was thinking
she's
about
like,
this
Ardeth, what are you doing here?
deductive reasoning about what's
Yeah.
happening, but like still,
So yeah,
we kind of went totally off. Yes, it's supposed to be. They say, I'm pretty sure in the movie they think they said it was 9 years later, which it's not. It's like
no.
7.
So here's the goof of this movie. In the first movie, which came out in 1999, the first scene where Rick is like fighting with the French Foreign Legion, it's it says that that scene takes place in like 1923, and then the next scene where they're like at the museum says that's 3 years later. So that would mean that it's
Yes,
1926. I did the research on this. So then
yes, you did the
yes, and
math.
then The Mummy
Yeah,
Returns, which came out in 2001, takes the first scene when they're getting the bracelet of Anubis in 1933. And Alex screams to his uncle outside of the museum, to Jonathan, I'm only 8 years old. So for him to be 8, Rick and Evie would have had to have him in 1925, and or possibly conceived in like 24. But at that point, they hadn't met. They met in 1926.
the chemistry was that
it
good
it
that
transfixed the laws of time and space. So in order for Alex to be 8 by the time of the events of the movie, that would mean that Evie is either like very pregnant with Alex during the events of the first movie, or already had him and he's just at home, and she's just pretending to not to know Rick for some reason.
he's really smart. He just skipped a couple years.
Of his own birth.
Yeah. Like instead of skipping a grade, he just skipped a couple
Yes.
years. Yeah, yeah. It's this movie. I think does a pretty good job though of it doesn't offer more than it's willing to answer, which
Yeah.
is fine. But there are things that I do wish that they go explore a little. So the big thing of this movie is that so it's the year of the Scorpion. Evie and Rick on out on their own like little expedition find the bracelet of Anubis, so the bracelet of the Scorpion King, and a whole like group of people are trying to bring back Emotep so he can use the bracelet to rise
Fine.
find find the scorpion, the oasis of Share.
Defeat the Scorpion King and
Yes,
claim
and
the army of Anubis.
yeah. Yeah. And so the big thing, but the other, with that we find out that Evie is a she is a the pharaoh that Emotep and Anok-Sunamun killed in the first one in ancient times. She's like the reincarnated daughter of him, and she was the one that
Yes.
protected the bracelet in pre ancient times, which is how she's able to find it in this one. And we also kind of it doesn't go into, I feel like it should have gone into more depth on it. It just kind of skims the surface. Ardith Bay sees a tattoo that's on Rick, which means that he's
A magi.
a magi like Ardith is. And
Yes.
obviously the whole he's like, see, there's three sides of the pyramid. You're a protector of man. She's the a
The guardian of the
reincarnated.
yeah.
Yes, and your son is the one that put the bracelet on to find it. Like it's three sides of the pyramid, and it isn't until the very end, obviously. And Rick has never really been a huge believer in this stuff, so it isn't until the very end where he's like seeing the picture and
The mural.
the scepter, and he realizes he's the
Yeah.
only one that can defeat the Scorpion King.
Yeah, which
I wish
I
they when he says, "Oh, that tattoo was slapped on me when I was in an orphanage in Cairo." It's like, what? Okay, but
yeah,
they don't go any past that. So it's like, okay, end of story. That does explain why he was in. What was the army he was fighting in the first one?
he was a member of the French Foreign Legion, and he was him and his like entire unit. I think they said that like they were pretty much just they went to go see if they could find
Hamanoptera.
um Hamanoptera, thank you. And
There's a lot
uh
of hard words in this, so
yeah, I remember bits and pieces. I haven't seen the first one in a bit of time, so the second one is more in my memory.
yes.
But yeah, they go to Hamanoptera and they fight a group of marauders. I don't believe that they were the Magi, because like Ardith Bay and like
No,
a bunch of like the other chiefs are like just overlooking the whole thing and are gonna intervene when and if they need to.
it was like an army though.
It was an army, and like they're fighting and they get completely destroyed. Like Rick is like Rick and Benny are like the only survivors, and Benny only survived because he hid in a tomb.
Because Penny
Um,
sucks.
yeah, Benny sucks. Yes. But I had a realization with the second movie of how did the bad guys find Hamanoptera so easily that they were able to give very detailed instructions to these three bumbling idiot mercenaries that we see in the beginning of the movie? They're able to just drive like this rinky-dink pickup truck to a dig site construction worker field in the middle of the desert in this hidden city in this lost desert that nobody has ever escaped alive from, except for 8 years ago.
I don't think it wasn't like,
Like the city was destroyed at the end of the
but it's
first
such a
movie. So
giant.
how
It's
did
just
they?
a giant pit by now of them like digging it. Yeah, they're digging through it to find Emotep. I don't think that is. I don't think that was that weird. I think
Yeah,
they're just
but
like, oh, we're out. I don't know, given our coordinates. I don't know.
yeah,
Um,
I mean, it would make sense if they said that like they had been digging there since the end of the first movie, that they've been digging there for like 6 or 7 years, and it's like, oh, we found like the Book of the Dead, we found the Book of Life, and now we found Imhotep. There's been a bunch of setbacks. Because we see like a bunch of those like scarabs from the first movie, like bust out a hole in the ground and just eat some of the
That's
workers.
another thing
Because
is this
yeah,
movie did a really good job at not going overboard with recycled like
assets.
yeah, from the last. So like the scarabs where they're in one scene because yeah, they're still down there. They can survive for a long time. It's explained in the last movie. They show up and
Yeah,
then they're not there. They don't show up any other time
they're
in the movie. It was fine. Like I
yeah. I think the only other time they show up is when Imhotep takes his like iron mask off when he first like reveals himself to Alex, and I think a scarab like runs across his face, and like that's it.
yeah, but they don't use the same gags too much. It's just like oh yeah, it's just left over from the last one. We move on.
Yeah,
Um
yeah, which I do appreciate that it is. They tried to do a lot more of its own original stuff,
yes.
and I also like the fact that they're like Imhotep's like Imhotep and like his entire cult and like the O'Connells are fighting against each other to fight a third independent faction of
Yeah.
the Scorpion
Yeah.
King and the Army of Anubis, which I thought was really cool of like introducing like a third element that is both an antagonist towards our protagonist as well as the other antagonist. Like
Yes. They
it was a wild card that I was not really a fan of at first because of reasons towards the end of the movie when we see him.
we'll hold off on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God, I have like a 10-minute like PowerPoint speech prepared for
A
that
TED
that
talk.
thing.
A TED talk on
Yes.
it.
Welcome to my TED Talk. So I really like that they introduced a lot of new elements to this movie because we get like there's like the scarabs and like all the mummies and stuff that we see in like the beginning of this movie was like, oh, that was like really fun stuff in the first movie, but they're kind of doing some new stuff. Like the mummies are like chasing them through like the busy streets of London while they're fighting on a double decker bus. That's
That
cool. That's
scene was
something new.
so
I
much
like that.
fun.
It really
But
was. And it was
yeah,
just like,
that to
yeah,
me the plot hole of that scene is so it is very much like sequel vibe of like when Evie is kidnapped. She's kidnapped in the first one. They rescue her.
yeah.
Emotep releases what is it like his uh he was the high priest. It's
His
like guys from the app from before. It's just
the
their
first movie, yeah,
they're other priest guys. I don't remember what they're
yeah.
called, but he releases them. Rick's like, not these guys again, and they get out of the museum. And Evie Part starts to put a bench in front of the door, and Rick's like, "Honey, these guys don't use doors." It's like you don't know that. I mean, he's correct in assuming that they don't, but he only
Yeah.
fought them in one like confined space. Like he doesn't.
Where there weren't any doors
Yeah,
anyway.
or they were, no, it was just like hallways, but no like doors. You don't know what they're gonna do. And that
Yeah.
scene, I'm like, how, like the double decker bus scene. So they go inside to rescue Evie, Alex, their son, and then Jonathan. I will say Jonathan and Alex were so good together because it was the
But they're like the Scooby and Shaggy of this
yes, it was
movie.
the very smart, responsible kid versus the irresponsible adult. And so they both like played off each other so well, like their screams
Yeah.
and they're waiting in the car and then the key breaks. I don't understand how that happens. So he has to go.
He was like twisting the key in the
Yeah.
ignition without like turning the ignition, if that makes sense, and he just
Oh,
snapped
it
it.
just snaps
So he
in
just
half.
he snapped the key in the ignition without turning it. He basically just pushed on it, and it's like, and Alex is just like, "You broke it, you broke it, you broke it," and John's like, Alex, if there's any time for hysterics, it'll be coming from me."
Oh yeah, before he decides to stay because he's like, if you see anybody running out screaming, it's just me. Like he's not even hiding the fact that he, he I mean, he would rather be anywhere else, but he's there
Yeah,
because it's
well,
his sister.
which is I think is kind of funny, but because I feel like they kind of downgraded Jonathan kind of significantly for this movie because in the first one he's like getting drunk while firing at the Magi when their campus first getting raided. He's like having a good time. He's just like he's just drinking out of like the like whiskey bottle and just shooting the guys on horseback, and he's like shooting the mummies when they're going to save his sister. It, there are multiple moments where like he would he would like find some way to like weasel
Yeah.
himself out of a situation, like pretending to be a mindless drone. It's like
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
like all the other things, for all the other like minions to like walk by him and then kind of like drone on. Yeah, there were several moments where like that where it's like, okay, he's like kind of capable in a fight, and I felt like in this movie he literally only had like one scene where he did that towards the end when he's fighting
Anoxinamoon.
Anoxinamoon, which
Oh, a
again,
reverse gag from the last one where, because Evie's the one that is,
needs
fluent in and can read ancient Egyptian and knows
Egyptian.
hieroglyphics, and Alex knows a little bit, and he's trying to bring Evie back to life, and it's the same. He's stuck on that same hieroglyphic that Jonathan needed help in the
It's
last
like
one.
it's a
I
bird, a
just love how
stork. I know that one. I
him
know that one.
flapping his arm like a bird. It's like I don't see how that's going to help when he's not looking at you. It's like
I mean, that's the same thing that his uncle did
no,
in the
and I know,
first
and
movie.
it was funny then too. um,
Yeah, it's like, oh, a
but
metaphys.
I mean, a joke of Jonathan is that, and I think it was intentional to not have him mature in this. He wasn't supposed to really have learned his lesson. We from the
Yeah,
very last in the last beginning end of the last movie, we kind of see that they have because Benny was trying to escape Hamunaptra with a bunch of gold and any of the treasures he could
yeah,
find, and then they leave on those camels, and so now they're rich. And we find out in the beginning Jonathan he pretty much like lost his fortune and uses Evie and Rick's house pretending to be like the millionaire who owns it. And I do love our reintroduction of Jonathan. He's like, lying to this girl, like, I killed the mummy and stole his scepter. And then, of course, all of Emotep's people are trying because they think this is another potential plot hole. Maybe you can explain it, or maybe you'll agree. So the
yep,
guy that one of the guys that now is like leading Emotep's cult. He's the one that Alex said
yeah,
like he is the doesn't he did he say he's the curator?
yeah. He's like the curator at like the
I
British
just thought it was
Museum.
bullshit that like Evie we find out so she says that the Benbridge scholars, so it's supposed to be like Cambridge, but in this universe it's Benbridge, and they want her.
I mean, there might be. I mean, there
Maybe,
might be
but
a
it's like that.
Benbridge,
It's
but
like
I don't
the
know.
anyway. They want her to run the museum, and we find out later. Okay, Alex spends a lot of his time at the museum. That's how he recognizes this guy. And even when Evie is at the museum and she sees him, she seems to know kind of roughly who he is, but he had no clue because they break into their house and they don't know that Jonathan's not Rick. Or maybe they just don't know who
Well,
Rick is, but I thought that seemed like bullshit to
I
me.
I mean I feel like it would make sense for them to not know who Rick is because I mean Rick isn't he's not the scholar of the
No.
family.
Yeah.
He's very much just like the gunslinger. Is like I'm going to go break this vase because there's some coins in it, rather than
Yes,
figure out the historical significance of this vase. So it would make sense for like the cult and or especially like the curator, like head honcho cultist guy, to not know who Rick is and mistake Jonathan for him. Because why would Jonathan and Rick be spending more time than they need to in a museum when they could be at a bar getting drunk and Jonathan can try and fail to pick up chicks pretending to
I
be
do
Rick?
love, I do think, kind of going back to what you were just saying, I do think there's a really great scene that showcases how opposite Rick and Evie are when they're at the, is it a temple? They're at Thebes. They're at that first site. That's where they're finding the bracelet.
Oh, in the beginning of the movie.
Yes,
Okay.
she's like, you know, there's a scene where she's like dusting a wall. They break it down. She's jumping. It's like a room filled with snakes and tarantulas and
Yeah, just a bunch
scorpions.
of bugs.
She's just jumping between like spaces. Rick's just walking through, stomping on them,
Yeah, you
and
just hear this. You just hear the squelching of his boots. It's like, ugh.
but there are like obviously they like compromise because she knows acknowledges okay maybe you breaking down this wall is the best way to do it. Or when they're trying to open the chest with the bracelet, he sees the key and he's like, why don't we try it your way? Like they both acknowledge what is the more appropriate response.
Yeah, yeah. They both have like their own style and their own um like strategies of like going through like a temple, and they've learned like attempted to like learn from their experiences from like the first movie. It's like, oh, like never read from a book. Like what's the worst that could happen? It's like, what's the worst they could take a bracelet out of a chest? Like lots of things, Evie,
Yeah.
lots of things. You not remember what happened before
Yeah.
or during you were pregnant?
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Our
because
our
math.
chemistry because man, our chemistry was so good that baby just was already being made before they were even like
Yep.
yeah. Um but I think that I love that first scene though when Jonathan's about to be bitten by a snake. Rick walks in. They realize Rick is Rick O'Connell. They throw a snake at him. He catches it, throws it back. They throw a knife at him. He catches it by the blade and throws it and hits it like in someone's chest. Like he's such a badass. Like and it's so
Yeah.
damn fun to watch. And
And
Evie kicks
it
ass in
that
this
also
because he makes
yeah,
sense. He would teach her.
oh yeah, absolutely. But that also the scene where he like catches like the snake that is thrown at him, that kind of leads into like one of like the kind of like subtle running jokes that we see throughout this movie of what specifically one of the cultists in Imhotep's like army. There's this guy that at the last minute like ducks out of some like incoming obstacle or projectile like coming his way, and immediately the person behind him gets hit by what was originally going to hit him. So the first thing we see is the snake. He like ducks out of the way, and like the guy behind him like gets a face full of snake. And then when they're in the museum like rescuing Evie, Rick and Ardith Bay are just like shooting, mowing down everyone down there. He ducks out of the way, and like the two cultists behind him get a face full of shotgun, and like a bunch of chemicals on the shelf explode. And a bunch of fire shows up, and then it happens like a couple more times, and then eventually him and Jonathan get separated in the jungle when they're being attacked by like the
Yeah.
pygmies, and it's like, oh, we're safe here, we're safe. Those are sacred stones, they'll never come around here. It's like, you sure? It's like, of course I'm sure. And the pygmy like catapults over the stones, not touching the floor, exactly like Jonathan said. Jonathan screams, ducks, and the guy who's been ducking the entire movie like falls victim to his own gimmick that has been happening the entire
My
movie.
mistake. And then Jonathan just runs away while
Yep.
his I mean technically he was correct, but also he was wrong. Um
Yeah,
yeah,
that it was just, I really liked that joke because it's kind of
it is
subtle,
very
and
subtle.
it's
I did
something that
not pick up on it at all.
yeah, I never really picked up on that until like, I don't know, like God, I want to say like my third or fourth time I watched it. It's like, hey, that guy ducked. I was like, oh man, that guy's lucky he ducked. Wait, that same guy ducked. Oh no.
So we gotta talk about the other big thing in this is that so while Evie is a reincarnated daughter of a pharaoh, Anoxuna Moon we finally like officially meet, and she's also been reincarnated. And then like halfway through the movie is pretty much when we get like all of the answers about what happened in the past. Because Emotep does like the whole sacrificing he wanted to do in the last one and brings her soul back from the underworld, and she's like officially back. But I was just thinking,
Yeah,
like, so
which
she,
very much confuses me even to
it
this
didn't
day.
really make, it just seemed weird. Like, she is, okay, she knows she's a Noxuna Moon reincarnated, and she says this. but it's like, okay, where did you come from? How did they find you? How did you figure out all this stuff? But also, she gets, gets a Noxuna Moon's soul, so it doesn't really. Is she also having like memories from her previous life, like Evie does? Because Evie totally knows who she is, but is obviously
Yeah.
still her own person. Like,
But it confuses me if like she's the reincarnation of a Rule and has like all this like memories and knowledge of like Imhotep in her past life, as well as like the memories from this life of her being alive in like the 20th century this entire time. Why does Imhotep need to go through the process of returning her soul to her body if she's already the reincarnation of the same person? It seems like an unnecessary extra step.
they didn't really explain it. It kind of, he says like, she says I'm a Noxuna Moon reincarnated, and he just says only in body. So kind of like, I assumed she doesn't have any of those memories. She's just very willing to like, oh, okay, this is the guy that my past self was in a relationship with. Okay.
Well, if she doesn't have any of the memories, then how is she able to find Hamanoptera? Because Ardith Bay says that the only
Yeah.
reason that they found Hamanoptera and like the Book of the Dead and like all the books and Imhotep was this woman. He says like holds a picture of like this woman was leading her, and it's like, well, if she has the memories, then why?
That's a
It's
fair
just
point. I think if
there, there,
anything,
there's like a lot of small plot holes, and after watching this with like a lot more of a critical eye than I normally would, they're kind of adding up, especially with the Scorpion King and that whole prophecy, which makes no sense.
if anything, I was like, wait a minute. So the whole final battle where the Scorpion King and Anubis's army just kind of like disappeared and died or whatever. That's at that place. That's at the Thebes, which they said is that first. That's the city where Emotep and Andoxuna Moon killed the pharaoh, and why, like, that's where it all started. I'm like, okay. I was like going trying to figure out like a map in my head of figuring this all out. I think going back to the Andoxuna Moon thing, yeah, I think if I kind of just look at it as, that's a good point. It does sound like an extra step. I think it's just she has memories. Evie seems to have her memories. That's how she finds the bracelet. If anything, I think the bringing her soul back from the underworld is just kind of like sealing the deal. Like, you're no longer whoever, what, because this person's name is not an Oxuna Moon. I'm just thinking, like, does she have a family?
It's no, her name in the movie is Mila.
Oh, do they wait? When did they say that? Did they say in the beginning?
When Lochna when they're being attacked in the museum and Ardith Bay is just shooting and only hitting like 5 people. That's another thing that kind of annoyed me is that everyone in this movie, aside from Rick, at like very convenient moments, has like the worst stormtrooper aim I've seen in a movie. Like Ardith Bay, everyone is like in a semicircle, like down below you. You have the high ground, you have a drum magazine for a Thompson submachine gun, and he hits like maybe 5 people. You could have mowed down like half of his cultists before they even had a chance to figure out that it's like, hey, he's up there. and and like as he's shooting like the 3 people that he just really doesn't want there, Lochna, like the main like
The
lieutenant,
one that like
um
babysits Alex.
like
Which
the main
they
like lieutenant cultist. That was funny. Yes, that is a funny scene. But yeah, during that shootout scene, Lochna throws an Mule a gun to her, and he says like Mila to get her
Oh.
attention, and he throws it to her. And they say it a couple other times, but like that was like the main time that I remember
Yeah, okay.
them saying her name. That wasn't an Mule.
Okay. Okay. But either way, I think it's just like her soul back from the underworld is just now she is fully a Noxuna Moon, not just Mila with memories of memories as a Noxuna Moon. Like she is. I agree that it is. It's like just seals the deal. Like he isn't into Mila, he's into a Noxuna Moon. But I did think there is that one scene where
Yeah.
she's just so willing as Mila to be with Emotep and do all this stuff. And I do like that one scene where he makes it look like it's ancient Egypt, and then they like start making out, and then it shows in real time he's still his gross corpse self, and she's just making out with a
Yeah.
corpse. Which
It's
also
like, yeah, and
he's not there because he's CGI. So what is she who or what is she making out with?
well, no, I mean, I think that for a good chunk of this, I think it was motion capture
Oh, okay.
for some of it. So for all we know, she could have been actually making out with Arnold Vosloo and just like a weird like motion capture, and then they just covered it up in post production.
Um yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
if that's what they did for the entire movie, but I do know that that's what they did for some of the stuff for the Army of Nubis. They did a lot of motion tracking for
Oh.
that, and the uh, mummies, like the servants of Imhotep
Yeah.
during the museum chase scene. Um, so I kind of want to jump into the titular character, the Scorpion
Yeah.
King, for this movie. So this was Dwayne Johnson's first acting role. And after this movie, they gave him a spin-off movie called The Scorpion King, which was it takes place in the same universe as the Mummy movies, but like they're prequels. So I think they happen like a few decades before the events of the first Mummy
Haven't you
movie.
seen
And
them?
I've seen the first one. The first one I remember the most,
Weren't they straight
because
to
after
video?
that, the first one I think had a theatrical release, but yeah, the rest of them were straight to video, and they all bore together. And now, like the Scorpion King, which was a prequel, there's a prequel to that where it's like him like as a teenager, like learning how to become a warrior and going on like this quest and like avenging his father and
Oh,
going on like this
okay. I
whole
remember
like Conan the Barbarian like bullshit revenge
I remember
story.
that commercial. It's I want to say it's before one of the Mummy movies, which is why I know it. And I just remember it was like the man he swore to protect, and then like father and it's just like so much effort went into this for a straight to video release. Like
Yeah, there's I want to say that there's like 4 or 5 mummy not mummy Scorpion King movies.
where was the world aching for a Scorpion King? Like
I I mean, I thought the first one wasn't that bad. Like, it's a very much like tongue-in-cheek, swashbuckling adventure movie, like fantasy movie, kind of like along like the same veins as like the first Conan the Barbarian movie, but this one's had a little bit more like levity and comedy to it.
okay.
Um, whereas like Conan the Barbarian's like, all right, I'm gonna go cut this guy's head off, and we see all that. But it's
Okay.
like Conan was like a little bit more gory, but like this one was just like, oh, there's like comedy. He like like catapults himself into like a tower to like assassinate like the main bad guy, and he ends up in like the chamber where like all of his like all of his concubines are. So it's literally just a harem room of just a bunch of like women, just like, oh, okay, I guess I'll just chill here for a bit.
Oh god.
um, so yeah, this was Dwayne Johnson's first movie, and he's in the movie for a total of probably 3 minutes.
The
Um,
intro and then the end? Or just including the
I don't
intro?
even think I don't even I think just I don't even think they used him for the ending.
Well,
I think
no,
they
of
just
course
used
not, but
like,
like uh
but yeah, for like the intro, I want to say like a maximum of like 3 minutes he was like on screen and actually used. Um,
it's literally sorry, the
s-
first scene of them is like it's that they're about to go to war, and it's his just going ah, like he's wearing like a scorpion metal thing that's like jumping up and down on him as he runs. It's like and it just cuts back and forth between both armies, just one running then ah. And then it cuts to them fighting, and then after 7 long years, the Scorpion King was defeated. And I remember just thinking, like wouldn't his defeat be like of his death? Because him being defeated, he seems like the kind of guy that wouldn't like him being alive implies to me more like he surrendered as opposed to like, okay, we're done.
Not necessarily. Like if like your entire army has routed from something like that, like there's not much coming back from that because like after like when we see like the whole narration of like after 7 long years the Scorpion King's bloody campaign came to an end, and it's like it shows like the Scorpion King and like maybe 50 other guys, like that's not enough to really like stage any significant comeback or really take anything other than like maybe a small village. So it's like he would literally have to start from like the bottom up in order to reclaim any semblance of an empire that he previously had prior to the fight that we saw in the beginning of the movie. Um, but yeah, so it's like the Scorpion King lost his battle in Thebes, which is the city that Rick and Evie are excavating in the beginning of the movie after this uh, prologue. And we see that after being banished to the desert of Amsher, uh, the entire remnants of the Scorpion King's army, they're all dying of starvation and heat exhaustion, and eventually he's the only one left, and he makes a deal with Anubis that he would give him his soul if he gave him the power and army to destroy all of his enemies. And then he's a scorpion that just
Yeah,
pops up out of the ground after it stings him a
yeah.
few times. And then an oasis just pops up out from under his feet, and it became the Oasis of Amsher, and that's how we get the army of Anubis, which is just a bunch of bipedal, okay looking CG dog
It's not. It's
creatures.
far from the worst
I'm
CGI I've seen. It's fine. Like it's.
yeah, for 2001 standards, it looks
I
okay.
don't know if
It's
we talked about this
passable.
last year, but the Mummy actually has pretty decent CGI that I will say it doesn't look amazing now, but it holds up for the time. And
Oh, for the time, that
and
was revolutionary.
like but also the makeup design is really incredible. So you like last week when we were like clarifying we're doing Mummy Returns, you sent me that VFX artist thing of the mummy, like the guy who worked on the mummy, and I was kind of
Yeah,
blown away. I didn't, first of all, I don't know about this movie, but for the last movie I didn't realize it was a miniature scale of an Egyptian city. I didn't even think about all the work that went into making the design for Emotep. Like it, I will say, it's pretty. This is kind of how I rate CGI. If it looks bad within like 5 years, then it's really shitty. Like it never looked good. But if it
yeah.
looks good, but if it looks good like 10 years plus, then that's really good. Like I think this, and I think like some of the CGI in like the first Pirates movie, like held up for a long time, and they're just now starting to look kind of, they look CGI.
Yeah, the paint is starting to peel and chip away a
Yes,
little bit.
but it
Uh,
doesn't look horrifying. Like it
no,
looks, yeah,
yeah, it's like from a like I like to think of it as like a fresh coat of paint on a house. Like from a distance,
yeah.
it looks good, but if you look at it under a very critical eye, you start to notice like some of the paint is starting to chip away, and I feel like that's kind of what we've been doing with the first Mummy movie and the second right now. Under a critical eye, yes, you do notice a lot of the flaws and inconsistencies, but from a distance and from a general perspective and point of view, these are very excellent and well made movies. If you just kind of appreciate them from what they are rather than all the minute discrepancies and details that I'll kind of get into a bit more because it is kind of fun kind of pointing them out. um, these are very, very entertaining movies, and I do greatly appreciate them for not just the entertainment value that I've had just watching them for years now, but it is just kind of amazing that the like the technical progress that was made just from like the first Mummy movie alone, and how they were able to kind of carry that forward into the second one and kind of change how movies were made, um, like that turned the century back then, because that the first Mummy movie came out in 1999, and it kind of changed how movies were made from the previous generation to now, because they were kind of going through that technical gap of early workings of CGI characters and just replica models to make them seem more realistic and believable, and kind of make the leap from miniature scale models to just fully fleshed out CG environments. And I feel like this is like one of the few movies that still kind of has remnants of realism in their sets, because they did use a miniature set. Whereas new stuff now, like Justice League, it's all CGI.
Wasn't isn't it ILM?
Yes,
Uh
ILM, Industrial Light
so
Magic.
so that's the same like special effects for like Star Wars, and
Yeah,
so
uh,
when I saw that I was like, "Oh, huh, I did not know that."
yeah, they definitely brought their A game with the first movie, and I guess they were on a time crunch with the ending of the second movie.
Because it's never Emotep that looks bad. It's
No.
the reveal, and the reveal of the Scorpion King, like it's a silhouette of a scorpion. Like you see a scorpion, you kind of see the outline of the Rock's body, and then it's the best worst CGI I think you'll ever see. Like if you go on YouTube and type like compilation of bad CGI, this will be on it, or
Yeah,
maybe it'll
no,
be the thumbnail for it. Like
like everyone knows this scene. Like
even if you've
even
never seen the movie, like
yeah, 100%. Like my girlfriend, she hasn't seen this movie, but she knows the Scorpion King. She knows that scene. um,
you will know it whether you like it or not, or no, whether you've
exactly.
seen the movie or not. Not whether you like it or not. No one
Yeah,
liked it.
yeah.
It's
Like
hilarious.
when I told her the other day, it's like, oh, we're doing like a recording. We're gonna do the Moment Returns. Like, oh, have fun talking about the Scorpion King. It's like, oh, I love you. um,
He looks
I love how infamous it is.
like a computer game, like a
It,
graphic.
it yeah, it looks like a PS2 cutscene.
But like not even like I've seen better computer graphics. Like it's so bad, and
Yeah,
I feel like it never looked good. Like I can't even imagine it must like did it look good that day the movie came out in 2001, and then it ever since looked terrible. Like
I don't know. I really can't gauge that, because it's
can you imagine if it looked good though? Like
I, I I mean, I can imagine if it looked good, because the same guys that I sent you of the
oh,
VFX
I didn't
artists,
finish it. Sorry.
they
Oh
did.
no.
No, in a it wasn't in that same video. In a different
Okay.
video they did a few months ago, they did a challenge to see if they could make the Scorpion King look good, and they did a lot of like deep fake videos and stuff like that to like put like the Rock back then, like they put his face and touched up that whole scene to make it seem a lot better. And I think they tweeted that out, and I think the Rock tweeted back on it. um but yeah, it does, like, check it out if you haven't. But yeah, like they've done a lot of like random deepfake videos. Like they did another one on like the Luke Skywalker reveal in like the Mandalorian. They
Mhm.
except they used like one of like the guys in the studio, and they just deepfaked Mark Hamill's face on him.
Yeah.
Because yeah, but it was really funny. But my main question with the this whole plot of this movie revolves around the fact that the Scorpion King is going to wake up and use his army, the army of Anubis, that
So
he
clarify.
controls.
Sorry, quick
Yeah,
clarification.
yeah,
So they find the bracelet. Alex opens it and puts the bracelet on, and it basically shows him like where to go to get to the oasis. And each place he'll get to the next place. It'll then show him the next place to go. And so they after him he puts it on. Ardith Bay says like there are basically 7 days until the Scorpion King wakes up, and then Emotep tells him if you are not in the like
the
in the
pyramid.
temple in the pyramid on the morning of the seventh day, the bracelet's basically gonna like kill
kill
you.
you.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, but even before that, Evelyn says that every 5,000 years, the Scorpion King will awaken and use his army of Anubis to, and in Rikakano's words, take over the world and
Wipe
take
out the
over and
world.
or yeah, wipe out the world and yeah. So my question is how does Evelyn know that he wakes up every 5,000 years? Because in the beginning of the movie, they said that this whole thing started 5,000 years ago, which means that the cycle that you just described hasn't happened yet.
She said every 5,000 years.
She says every 5,000 years, which means that this would have been the first time that cycle would have taken place. She makes it sound like it's a cycled event. So that means that even if they do defeat the Scorpion King, that means that they just reset the clock for the next 5,000 years, regardless if they defeat him or not. Which I don't understand
Huh.
because it.
I don't remember her saying that.
She said, yeah, she says that in the beginning. She says every 5,000 years the Scorpion King wakes up. So it's just
Is
why.
it when they first like get back to their house and
Well,
she's
yeah,
like, "We
yeah,
got to go to the Oasis," and Rick's like,
yeah.
no, we just got home." And
Yeah, it's right in that whole scene of like her trying to convince him, it's like, oh, let's go, it'll be fun. It's like, no, we just got home.
I didn't catch that. I might watch it again
I
specifically to listen
I
for it.
I mean, I might be remembering that wrong, but that's what I remember, and
I
it's just
thought you were gonna say like, so is he gonna wake up regardless of the bracelet?
yeah,
Which I think no. I think it's more like because we find out it's the year of the scorpion, so I kind of more think it's the year he can wake up, and whoever puts the bracelet on will wake him up. I don't think he
yeah,
would wake up on
but
his own.
but
But
it
the
just
5,000 years thing, I did not catch that. So
yeah, but it just it really kind of irritated me when she said that it's like every 5,000 years. Like she says every 5,000 years. It's like how do you know this when this cycle has never happened before? I don't understand why that. I'm literally like going through like the movie right now so I can like catch that. Um, but it if this cycle has never happened before, then how would you know that? I
that's a
really.
very fair point. I didn't catch it, so I can't answer it.
It's like why movie explain?
We actually speaking of the Scorpion King, we find out that in her past life, the reason she finds the bracelet is because she was the bracelet's protector, and this all happens because it's a fight between her and Anaxuna Moon, who is the pharaoh's like mistress or going to be wife, soon to be wife, and she's the pharaoh's daughter, and they're fighting, and basically Anaxuna Moon is just like they're both really good, but Anaxuna Moon keeps beating her, and so they're like, okay, so Nefertiri is her
Yeah,
name. You're gonna protect the bracelet, and Anaxuna Moon, you're gonna protect me, the Pharaoh. And it's like, so
it's
it's like,
oddly
do you
specific.
want her to protect the bracelet? I mean, she keeps losing. Like, but I guess like I don't
Yeah,
know. It was a first. The whoever's a better fighter is gonna protect the person, and whoever is the not better fighter is gonna protect the bracelet.
yeah. Well, I mean, it also is really cool with like that fight scene.
Yeah,
That Rachel Weisz and uh, I'm looking at her name, but
Patricia Val
Velasquez.
Yeah.
Yeah, they trained for 5 months for that fight scene, and they did not use any stunt women.
Yeah.
It's like
It
that
looks
is
pretty good.
yeah, no, their fight is amazing. It is very believable. And also I just went through the movie and I want to take a screenshot of this. Yes, but he only awakens every 5,000 years. And I don't know how she knows that. This is I don't know why this bothers me so much, but it does.
That'll, I guess, in 5,000 years. Sorry, other future people.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Sucks to be
Oh.
you. I'm literally sending it to you right now just so I can say that I'm not crazy.
Um, but speaking of actually that scene, so that scene is really fun. I think that that fight scene is really great. But this does bring up. Wait, I'm looking. Oh. Yep. Okay. She does say only every 5,000 years. So, yeah, you're right. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So it's
But
like, what's the rush if you?
yeah,
And it also doesn't make any sense. So if just the army of Anubis just command whoever killed the previous like guy in charge. So even if Imhotep kills the Scorpion King, they've already killed Imhotep before. They can just do it again. So I don't understand why. Like I mean I can understand what their rush is because the bracelet will kill
which they don't
Alex.
know
But I mean,
that until
yeah,
later
they only know that. Yeah, they know that when Alex tells
at
them
the end after
like
they rescue him.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, like 5 minutes before
when they're
sunrise.
basically running, they're outrunning the sun. That was actually very stressful.
Yeah,
That is a very stressful part of the movie. As to that kid, he apparently loved the Mummy so much, and he turned down the chance to audition. This is again 2000, at probably 1991,
yeah,
1999, 2000 at the time. He turned down a chance to audition for Harry Potter to be in this movie, and because he knew the movie so well, he actually was kind of like their consultant, which is adorable. Like he plays their son.
yeah.
He's like living. He loved it so much, and then played their son. Like that must have been like the scene where him. I was thinking about this when him and Brendan Fraser are running through a forest. He was probably having so much fun.
I would have had a
Yeah,
blast working on this
yeah.
movie. Um, yeah, no, it's like why can't Brendan Fraser be my dad?
Oh. Um,
um,
but actually, sorry, going back to the scene, I did kind of want to bring something up that we didn't really talk about in the
yeah,
last Mummy movie, but it's more
shoot,
evident in this. This movie is very whitewashed. Let's just like lay that out. Like,
yeah, yeah,
Arnold Vosloo is South African, so he's like Dutch and Swiss. He's not Egyptian. No one's. I don't know what Ardith Bay is. So, but he's not white. That's different. But like Rachel Weisz is obviously also she's supposed to be half Egyptian, and she says that in the first one. And then in this movie, they went above and beyond to make her look Egyptian. Like her hair's darker. She was wearing eyeliner that kind of resembled like coal, like that in ancient Egyptians
yeah,
would wear. Um, like, I mean, I will say,
yeah.
Unoxinamun. I don't know what she's. I want to say Hispanic. I'm not. Don't quote me on that. Uh,
I can only speculate, and I feel like I would be stereotyping by doing so.
um.
Oh, she was born in Venezuela, so
Okay, so
there we
she's
go.
okay. So she's Latina.
South
Yes,
American,
but
yeah,
basically, I mean, I will say it's kind of interesting just because everybody's just casted based on appearance and or acting ability, not really based on like you know heritage and ethnicity.
ethnicity,
But I do think because
yeah,
Arnold Vosloo, I can't picture anybody else, but he is a white man playing
yeah.
a mummy. Like
Well, I mean, I don't really fault them this movie for that
no,
because
like
it seems like every movie that in has like some interpretation of like Egyptian culture like has like kind of like a whitewashed
white.
appearance of
Yeah,
like Egyptian pharaohs. Like even in like Night in the Museum, who the guy who plays the pharaoh in that
Rami Malek.
yeah,
He
he
is Egyptian.
wait, he is?
Yes, he is Egyptian.
Ah, shit. Okay.
so you're so
Well,
you're
there goes my point.
but I mean
I thought.
I mean
Okay, I don't know what he was, but I didn't think he was Egyptian. Oh my
anyway,
god.
um
Well,
but
there
like
goes my street cred.
but by this point though, obviously whitewashing was such a thing that's like only within the last few years have people made an effort of like let's stop whitewashing.
Yeah,
So by this point, I mean I'm not really faulting. I mean I will fault the movie on it, but also it was such a normal thing to do that like it's kind of like I I can only complain about it so much. Um because like again it's was
well,
such a typical thing to do at the
yeah.
time.
and I don't really think it was like that big of a hindrance
No.
to this movie. Um, excuse me. But I do feel like a lot of like the supporting type characters, like Izzy and Lochna, like a lot of the characters that aren't the primary focus for a lot of scenes were kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
put down into like auxiliary positions. Like Izzy was kind of like the wacky kind of sidekick character that was kind of introduced like way later, and Lochna was like the very like intimidating villain henchman type character.
We haven't
Um,
talked about Izzy. I
no,
realize
I don't think anyone's talked about Izzy.
Izzy is so. This movie doesn't necessarily copy paste. It's more of just they get an upgrade of okay, of the equivalent of the last movie. So last movie it was Winston who was from the Royal Air Force because he had a plane. So this time, uh, Rick knows somebody, Izzy, who he's offering them. He thinks it's a plane, and then turns out it's a like
A
hot air
blimp.
balloon ship. He said it's a dirigible. um, um,
And
but
it's like,
like,
so you really don't want your son to be saved then?
but he said it's fast and it's really quiet, and it gets them there, and it gets them out. So, I mean, it worked. But I realize though this is one of those movies like I love it so much, but there's so many things about it I forget until I'm watching the movie.
Yeah.
And Izzy
Like
is, I will admit, one of them.
he is a very forgettable character because it only seems like he's in like 3 scenes, even though he's present for I want to say like half the movie.
Yeah, and I do love the last audible dialogue that we hear in the movie is so it's the scepter that Jonathan had, Rick uses it to pay Izzy, and he keeps like throughout the movie is stealing it back from him because it's his, he wants it. They then use the scepter to defeat the Scorpion King, and
Because
then
apparently on a mural in the Scorpion King's lair is a mural that shows specifically how to kill him. I don't know why you have
I
that
know.
in your lair,
I don't know why the
but it's
Scorpion King has
there.
that in his own house. Yeah, I was
All,
thinking that too.
it, like
But I did love the
it,
scene, but I agree it doesn't really make sense why it's there.
it definitely kind of like perpetuates the stereotype that like the Scorpion King is just a PS2 like end game like video game boss, that like this is his like glowing weakness. Just like
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's like all right, it makes there's just so many little things like that that just make no sense, but it's like screw it, the movie's almost over. This movie's over 2 hours. Just end it
I
already.
just do love that line of like Rick realizing that, and he's like, Jonathan, the gold stick thing.
It's a
It's
spear.
a not
It's
the
like, really?
scepter,
It
the
doesn't
gold
look like
stick
a
thing.
spear?
But so Jonathan is super excited because throughout the movie we find out the top of the pyramid of the Scorpion King's pyramid, there's a diamond, like this giant diamond, and as there Izzy's pulling him up, basically the oasis is like being pulled into the pyramid, and Izzy's comes to get them. They think they're all about to die, and Jonathan's just like, "No, lower me down so he can grab the diamond," and just Brendan Fraser's just like, "It's not worth your life, you idiot!" Like,
Yes, it
but
is.
the
Yes,
thing
it
is,
is.
the last movie I realized he did not get to stop and pick apart the treasure that was in the pyramid or in the temple. So this time he's like, "No, I'm not leaving it behind." And then the last audible dialogue of this movie is Izzy being like, "You know, you're splitting that with me because you took my gold stick thing." And they're just like, "What? No, no, I don't know what you're talking about." He's like, "I swear on on the head of my wife." And he's just like, you don't got
You're
a wife." And that's just the last dialogue we hear as they're arguing, as Rick and Evie are making out because she was dead and then brought back to life, and everything's good again, and the movie's over.
Yep. Um, I do like the constant like bickering between Izzy and Jonathan, but
Yes.
it like I do feel like Izzy didn't really have anything else to contribute other than mode of transportation, and I feel like they really tried to give him some semblance of like a personality. And I think the only thing they got close to that was when he was like talking about like all like the failed attempts and other like missions that he's gone on with Rick, where
Where he
every
doesn't
mission
want to
he's
help
gone on
him.
with Rick,
Yeah.
yeah, where every mission he goes on with Rick, he gets shot.
And then at the end,
Um,
when he's like he's complaining to him, and he's like, "Hey, you didn't get shot," and he's like, even admits, like, "Yeah, I didn't get shot."
yeah. Which I did think was pretty funny. But yeah, like I feel like that was really like the only semblance of uh like a character with him of like I'm not going on with another mission with you because we have history and I don't want history to repeat itself, and I don't want to get shot again. Which I thought was a kind of a cool dynamic, and I felt like would have made like kind of a cool like prequel or like a spin-off of just like Brick's like earlier escapades of like because that clearly doesn't seem like something that you would do with the French Foreign Legion of just
No.
him doing like random like swashbuckling adventures, and it's like him rescuing, and I quote, a belly dancer girl,
Yeah.
um where Izzy gets shot in the ass.
Well, him and I realize like Ardeth are the ones that like Ardeth is basically a guardian of the desert of these like let's keep these monsters down. Like that's
Yes,
his job. And
and he is the worst at his job. Him and the
I mean,
Magi are so horrible at their job
it's not
that
their
it is
fault.
it is 100% their fault.
They told them to
No,
leave, and then they didn't.
no, okay, yes, the events of the first movie, you can kind of give them some benefit of the doubt because like they did attack, they did give him a warning, they kind of did all this, but in the second movie, they did absolutely nothing until like the very end.
We just see he's like incognito dressed, kind of like blending into the crowd, and then when he shows
Yeah,
up at Rick and Evie's, Jonathan's like, they're waking up the creature, and Jonathan's like, isn't it your job to make sure that doesn't happen? And he kind of just
yeah,
glosses over it and doesn't
yeah.
answer.
He immediately deflects that question. He immediately deflects it, and it's just
But I
I
do
okay.
really love Ardeth, and I love like the scene where when Rick's inside fighting the Scorpion King, and it's pretty heavy because the scene just before is uh Moon killing Evie, which was there a reason for her to kill her? Was it something tied back to their like past life? Like it
I think
seems kind
just
of
hey,
random.
now, it's like hey, now you can't stop us because you're dead.
And it was
That's pretty
really
much
and
it.
it was sad like but I felt like the reasoning for it was not really there. But anyway, Rick's just like kind of nothing to lose kind of uh
Yeah, except
exterior,
for
and
my
my
son
son, but like
who just witnessed his mom get murdered in front of him.
but
Um,
then while he's fighting the Scorpion King, Artifae and the other Magi are fighting Anubis's army, and I do kind of love like we're done, yay! And then he's like, wait a minute, that was way too easy, and then sees like so many more are coming,
thousands.
and
I do genuinely enjoy that scene where
yeah,
it's like they see all that and like the surviving like couple like I guess like 100 like magi that survived like that first initial attack. They're all lined up and they're all looking at Ardith and it's like
till
to the
death,
death,
yeah.
and I love scenes like that in movies where like they're faced with such like insanely ridiculous odds where it's like no matter what you do, no matter what strategy or interpretation of a plan, there's absolutely no way out of this where you will survive. And even knowing those odds are so stacked against you, you're still going to stick through it and just be a major thorn in this person's side. And it's like, even if you don't win, you're going to make sure that they lose. And I love scenes like that. And I feel like this is like one of my favorite examples of that. And like the other example I would have would probably be the movie Rogue One.
Oh
Because like that, the entire like last 40 minutes of that is just a perfect example of like, yeah, there's probably no way we're going to win this, but we're still going to
yeah.
accomplish this mission.
Have you ever seen
It's
that?
like, they're,
Yeah. Have you seen that meme from Mulan saying, "How come every time when they're singing, there's like hundreds of them, but whenever they're fighting, there's like, I don't know, 20 of them. Like, that's a
Yeah.
good point. So before we kind of get into the final question, I was thinking about this, like, when it comes to Universal movies, like this is like a monster movie technically, but I feel like,
Yes.
and same with like Jurassic Park, but like I feel like obviously what does make it memorable and makes it fun are the cast of characters. And I feel like this is a movie, it's like an unofficial like ensemble. Like they're pretty good together and they're fun to watch. And I genuinely care about Rick and Evie and Jonathan and Ardith. Like I like they all play to get well together and they are fun to watch. And it's like that's not necessarily, and obviously that's one of the reasons why I like this movie is because it's a continuation of these characters. Not like the third one, which is just
Absolutely.
a lack of characters
Uh,
slash different actors, and it's like it doesn't need to exist,
and a completely different
which there's no
location.
reason for that movie. It's like I feel like even worse than Independence Day Resurgence in terms of needing this movie existing. Like it did not need to happen at all. But like this is like, and this movie isn't even like, it's not like, oh, the events of the last one, like, you know, led to the Scorpion King rising or something. Like no, like it was the characters being the characters and it all kind of just happened.
This is a very character-driven movie, and I feel
Yes.
like that is the main driving force, and you're able to kind of ignore, as I said, like all the, like the random discrepancies and like plot holes that the movie kind of leaves at your doorstep because you're so captured by the performance of the characters and like their whole chemistry with everyone.
Yeah. So final question. Kevin, do you think this movie is real? Is there anything about this that is plausible?
No, I do not think that this movie is real because if the Magi were half as good as their job as they say they are, they would have just shown up with their sizable cavalry-sized army and just stormed Hamunaptra while they were in the middle of their dig site before they dug up Imhotep and resurrected him. Or
In
hell, they
this
probably would have
movie or the
in
last
in
movie?
in this movie. Well, in the last movie, I feel like they would have done a lot better of a job of keeping Rick and Evie out. But in this movie, when like all the cultists and like the diggers are just working uh in Hamunaptra, just excavating all like the ruins there and digging them up in like the book, like all the scenes that we see in the Magi, like there's like a it's a sizable like army, and they're all on like horseback. They're all armed. They all have like ammo, so they all have guns. They all have swords. They are very skilled, well versed fighters. Their whole mantra is to protect Hamunaptra and make sure that the mummy doesn't rise. So why didn't they do that? There's literally hundreds of you, and we only see Ardith Bay literally in Hamunaptra. I can understand Ardith Bay not doing anything because it's literally just him. What's one guy gonna do against this entire like cultist workforce here?
That
Like they're probably
actually,
unionized and everything,
yeah,
but like with like the entire like Magi army that you have at your beck and call with your like carrier falcon, why didn't you just like, hey, like get these guys over here? They just dug up Imhotep. We got to stop them before they ship him to England. It's like, do that. Just the fuck
that
are you waiting
also,
for?
that actually also reminds me. So, uh, because Ardith and Lochna seem to have a history, and they just don't ever address it. Like the first time they meet, they're just like, okay, they know
Yeah,
each other, and even the fight scene, like where Ardith kills him, like I feel like it's a interesting fight, but I don't really know the history. I don't know other than you're good, he's bad. Like there's not really any substance to, like I'm like, okay, did you guys work together? How do you know each other? It never once
I
comes up. He's
yeah
very undeveloped, and it's kind of unfortunate.
yeah. The only kind of character development he gets, if any, was just he hates kids because he just is basically babysitting
Oh,
Alex, and that's
Lochna.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Like
that's
him,
the only character development he ever gets.
him babysitting him, and then uh the part where he takes Alex to the bathroom, and
Oh
he's
yeah,
just like turn. He's like, I can't go with someone's watching, and he just turns around. He's like, I don't trust you. You'll look, and he turns around like in full disgust, like what? And then just he leaves, and I just kind of love like I know Alex is kind of sort of messing with him because he can. Because he can't touch him because he's got the bracelet. But I do just love that, like, what? Do
yeah.
you think I am nothing
And
better than you?
I know, and he's also like clearly doing this to like
Hey,
get him
reading
out of the room.
material.
So he can like get him out of the room so he can like work on an escape plan. But I don't
Which
know.
also
It just
shows because he escapes because he moves. He sees like in like the toilet. There's like a hole like underneath. Does that mean just like anyone who's in there is just like so like shit is just on the railroad tracks across Egypt? Like
yeah.
it's just a hole. Like how is there holding any water? There's no plumbing. It's just like
It just it like catches in. You pull the plunger or like the flush it, and it just opens up. Like there's inner workings in there. It's just very basic. It's not just a direct hole, but it does drop everything on the tracks.
I'm like ew. So the, like
Like it does flush like water and everything to kind of clean it out a little
that's
bit.
why
But
you don't want to be
yeah,
tied to the railroad tracks because it's covered in shit. Forget the fact
well
that
yeah,
the
that
train's
too.
coming. Um, I like when I was thinking like, is this real? Like, define real. Um, do I agree with you that if the Magi had done some, if there was some effort on their end, because it's like if there's effort on their end from keeping Emotep from rising in this movie, we're not seeing it because it seems like they did a good
Yeah,
job at keeping people from not discovering him previously. But then again, it seems
yeah,
like when there's actual effort to waking him up, they don't work as they don't work as hard.
yeah. 'Cause it seems like Ardeth Bay is like the only Magi doing anything in this entire movie.
Yes. Um.
I mean, until like the very end when they were fighting like the army of Anubis, and like they're all very much willing to like lay their lives on. It's like that's the only time we're seeing any effort put in on their part.
I think I agree with the Magi. I think part of me just feels like logically nothing necessarily didn't make sense other than some of the stuff that you pointed out. Um, like
Did you prior to like me pointing this out? Did you ever like notice or like pick up on any of that?
on the like Magi or the whole every 5,000 years. No,
Yeah, or like any of that?
no. If anything, I was more just like I was more curious about like we're getting all this backstory on this major backstory on like past life Evie. I kind of wanted to know more about Rick. Like that was what I was thinking. Like not as much this time. The last couple times I was watching it, um, I think it's more just like lack of character development that I found myself caring more about. Uh, I know you're correct that this isn't real, but I just like I know
it's
you're
like
right.
it's like it's like it's like damn, you put a very valid argument.
I know you're right. I just can't 100% say. I think it's because I feel like
You don't want to agree
I
with
feel
it.
like the on the end of like artist side, yes, I agree. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. And I also think if anything I thought I was just like does it make a ton of sense that so like Alex puts the bracelet on and it shows him first of all, it showed Giza, and then it said they it showed them in Karnak. It's like, okay, well, why was it showing Giza first? Is it that's where the bracelet was at one point?
I think that was just like a starting point.
Okay, but then it shows the next place to go, and then he'll go to the next place, and it'll show him the next place to go. And I'm like,
Yeah,
why not just show the last place that actually is
I
known, and then show the next step?
Yeah, that's what I want to know, because like a couple of the spots, there's like, oh, here's like this island fortress. Like, why do I need to go here to go to? It seemed like there was a lot of unnecessary steps for this
Yeah, like
treasure hunt,
unless there's something
and half
there.
of it is seen in like, yeah, and half of it is seen through a montage. So there was really no reason for any of that, because it's just them following the breadcrumbs that Alex is leaving behind. That How do the bad guys not know that he's building such elaborate sandcastle
Cuz he hid it
designs?
by his with his jacket. Duh.
How? Okay, yeah. I don't understand. Like, I know Lochner just wants to spend as little time with him as possible, but Jesus Christ, dude, you are like the worst henchman.
Or the
Just
yeah.
the fact that he's not, just the fact that he isn't paying attention, that he's not leaving breadcrumbs, is just beyond stupid on his part.
I think the stuff on Evie and Rick's end, I believe I agree though on the Magi side, and as well as like the lack of paying attention to Alex on the mummies on Team Mummy, like that seems kind of unrealistic.
On Team Imhotep.
Um, so yeah, I agree. There's a lot of things about this that just don't add up and don't
Yeah.
make as much sense as they could. So I guess I'll have to go with no, it's not real.
You you sound so
I'm
upset
like,
by
because like,
that.
I think it's because I know you're correct, but my brain doesn't want to say it. um, but
So that
overall,
being said, I would 100%
yeah,
recommend this movie. 8.5
I
out of
do love
10.
this movie.
8.5 gooey mummies out of 10.
No, juicy.
Yeah, close enough.
uh,
It's been a while since I've seen the first one. I can't get all the
I do
references.
obviously. I mean, watch the first one first. Everyone, especially Rachel Weisz, looks like a baby. Uh, Brendan Fraser looks
Oh
exactly the
yeah.
same in these two movies. Um, but yeah, these are really fun movies. Like if you haven't checked them out, I would. They're really fun to watch. Uh, I definitely deem them a summer movie, but I mean, I guess again, you could watch it any time. I feel like it's a movie that I'm supposed to watch during Halloween, but I'm like, no, it's not. It's not July. I'm not gonna watch it. Um,
Yeah, no, this is definitely like 100% a summer movie
yeah.
for me.
And last year,
Which makes sense why
yeah,
we're doing it for our summer
last year I
movie-a-thon.
didn't watch the second Mummy, so this time I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch the first one and then I will watch the
How
second
could
one
you?
and make an effort to watch them. Um, yeah, so that's kind of it.
Yeah. Um yeah, no, this movie, I cannot express how much this movie just kind of brings me
Yes,
joy. Like this movie, this is just kind of like a very fun, swashbuckling, kind of tongue-in-cheek type movie that you can kind of just watch just at any point in time. I just kind of associate it with summer, because a lot of times on like road trips, like, yeah, like my mom's like van, we had a DVD player, and my sister and I would watch like this and the first Mummy movie like all the time, and like a couple other movies, but it was, the Mummy was like our go-to like road trip summer like movie.
I just feel like these were
And
playing on
I
TV
feel
all the
like I feel like,
time when I was younger,
yeah, that too. It just, yeah, I can't
particularly during
really
the summer.
associate it with like,
Yeah,
I know yeah, I can't really associate it with like any other um season other than summer now, because of like the strong memories that I have watching this just on the road. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it. And if you guys like this episode, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. You guys can find us on YouTube, Spotify,
Stitcher,
uh, Stitcher. Yeah, take it away, Sam. I always forget
uh,
some of these.
Overcast, and according to our friend Ben, I guess Google Podcasts or Google Play, one of the two. I don't remember. I'm sorry. Um, yeah,
Pretty much wherever you guys can find a podcast, you guys can probably find us. And if not, you guys can always find us on Facebook. You guys can find us on YouTube.
Instagram.
You guys can always find us in like some like the Instagram, all that fun stuff. So that being said, I guess that is the end of this episode for our summer-a-thon type movies. Join us next week where we talk about another summer sequel, Jurassic Park: The Lost World.
Roar.
Yeah, roar! Great joke.
Great. I couldn't even tell the difference. Yeah. Ha.
Clever girl. All right.
Reference.
On that note, I'm Kevin Tracy.
I'm Samantha Tomlinson.
You've been listening to Movies Real. Bye bye, folks.